Thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon. I'm joined here with Joe Curry, who's the tour producer with arTour. I work as the creative broker, as many of you know. I'm also going to be joined this afternoon by Charlie Cush from Circa. We'll introduce Charlie a little bit later in the session, but the purpose of today is really to give you a little bit of a briefing about what to expect at Showcase. So if you have any questions along the way, as Stephen's already mentioned, put it into this, type it into the chat room, and we'll try and pick up those questions as we go. And then, so basically the structure for this session will be, we'll talk through the details of the event, so you get a fairly clear session, idea about what to expect when you get to Showcase and how we're going to structure that time. Charlie's going to sort of offer a little bit of advice about some things to consider while you're doing your pitching at Showcase. Joe's here because Joe and I were involved in Showcase last year. We've been planning a considerable amount of this year's Showcase activity. Joe is actually finishing at the end of this week as the tour producer. She's going on leave. And we're going to be joined by a new tour producer, Angie Dundaven, and so Angie will be taking over the reins fully from Monday, and obviously anyone in the arTour office is capable of answering your questions about Showcase. So thanks again, and thank you to Flying Arts for letting us access this incredible resource. Get started on the event. You will have all received an email so far to sort of outline a time and some expectations about the pitch or the performance that you've been offered. There's essentially two options. People have been invited either to pitch a 6-minute pitch to a room of presenters. Some people have been invited to perform up to a 10-minute excerpt. The reason that that's happened like that is because we've actually had panels of presenters who have helped us select or to help curate the program at Showcase. So really the program or the offering that you've been given responds to what those panel members have indicated they would like to see. So when you submitted your production for Showcase, we put all of those productions to the panel, and they selected the ones that they either wanted to see a pitch from or a performance, depending on how they wanted to make more decisions about that work. So because of that reason, we're trying to create a program at Showcase that really is tailored to the different presenters that are likely to be in the room. So there's actually 4 pitching sessions. There's 4 pitching sessions across the program. There's 2 that run consecutively, and then a second 2 that run consecutively. So in the first 2, there's different presenters in the room for those pitches, and in the second one, there's again a different mix of presenters in the room. Depending on, I could probably actually sort of describe, because there's enough people here that we could probably talk through this. So for example, I can see Amanda, just working through from the top of the list of who's participating in this discussion. Amanda, you're from the Crack Up Sisters, so you'll be performing in the evening's performance excerpts on the Monday night. Damon, I believe that's from Horsehead. You're doing a performance excerpt, but you're actually in a room presenting to people from community presenter groups. So they're largely made up of local councils and local arts councils who are volunteer community groups. So that might sort of, as we talk through this a little bit more, it might give you a sense of how you might want to structure your pitch to that group. Just continuing to work through. Emilio, you're pitching to the large managed venues, the large sort of A venues, if you like, were interested in hearing more about your show. So that would be to that room. Let's see, Melissa with Vincent, again, that's to a mixture of community presenters, so those local arts councils and local councils, and the sort of small to medium-sized managed venues. So we're combining that group because they all wanted to see more about your production of Vincent. Paul, you're performing in the evening as a performance excerpt, and then there was a particular group wanted to see a little bit more about your pitch from you as well. So that was from the sort of small to medium size community presenters and small to medium size venues as well. So sorry, that's perhaps a little bit confusing to run through it like that, and we can obviously elaborate on that more. But the important thing to take from that is that the purpose of these sessions is to really speak to a particular group of presenters and to tailor your pitch in a way that appeals to them or helps inform them about your production in a sort of a practical way. In terms of the overall program of Showcase, on the Monday from midday we start with a welcome, and we'll be doing some getting to know you kind of activities to start with. We're going to be giving people from the venues, the presenters, a chance to sort of talk a little bit about their venues to you, so you get a sense of where they're coming from. And then we move into those pitching sessions, and we have an afternoon full of those things. In the evening, we have performance excerpts, and we're really trying to create an atmosphere in the room at the Mackay Entertainment Centre. We have the foyer put aside for that, and we're really trying to create an atmosphere where those performances are enjoyed in the way they were sort of designed to be enjoyed, so that people can have a glass of wine while they enjoy the show. They can, if you like, have a genuine audience experience. The next day, on the Tuesday, we have some time in the morning for breakfast, where some people can have discussions at breakfast time, and then some professional development sessions. And then what happens is all those presenters, after morning tea, all those presenters will go off into a room and start to review all of the work they've seen and start to make some decisions about what they would like to express interest in moving forward. While that's happening, we've also got a session for the producers, and that will be a professional development session, particularly looking at community engagement. And so, and then we can bring everyone back together again at lunchtime. So the pitching happens on the Monday, the decisions happen on the Tuesday, and then within that there's a series of like networking opportunities and room for people to have those discussions about, asking those sort of finer questions about your work. So the reason that we've kept pitching, particularly regarding the pitching sessions, the reason that we've kept it to 6 minutes is because we want it to be pretty punchy. We want it to be really to cover the details that are important for those presenters to know about your production, and then and then after, if it's enough of a hook, then hopefully that will lead to a discussion afterwards. So rather than sitting there and really talking about every town that it's ever been to and every element of your production, it's really a 6 minute pitch to get them excited about the work, with a view to then going and talking to you about it later on in the showcase event. We have projectors and screens available so that you can have a PowerPoint presentation. We've already indicated in the email that we've sent to people that if you have a slide presentation that you would like to include in your pitch or presentation, that we have those details a week before showcase so that we can queue them up, test them, make sure that it all works with the system that's at the Mackay Entertainment Centre, and make sure that that's going to be fairly seamless and it looks as polished as possible for you. Oh, sorry, I understand there's a bit of delay with the video and my voice. I'm just reading that. Thanks, Paul. So it's 6 minutes, and we're really going to be quite strict about it. There's a couple of minutes for getting on and getting off, but really we will insist that those pitches are 6 minutes. In that 6 minutes, you can sing the whole performance. You can sing the whole pitch if you want to. You can interact with the audience. You can play video through the system. You can play sound through the system. As long as there's no sort of major props or set that you're going to bring up there with you, and that we can get you on and off in that period of time, really the options are pretty open for you. and so what else? That's the important thing to really be aware of, is that it's a really kind of a limited amount of time, but that's quite intentional on our part, because the feedback has been that, you know, these pitching sessions that everyone gets 15-20 minutes to talk become very hard for those presenters to really engage with. They sort of start to switch off. So we want to, it started last year as a bit of this sort of Pecha Kucha style pitching session where you had a very small amount of time. We're going to relax that a little bit this year so that people have a chance to express themselves properly, and they can use the sort of their skills in their production, you know, those qualities of their production in a way that sort of sells it in the best possible light. So what else? We're going to have an MC who's going to be at the event. We'll have Lewis Jones again. Will be back at the showcase this year. He'll be sort of introducing a lot of the people who are doing pitching. So we will probably be coming back to you between now and showcase to get a little bit of an introduction about how you want the MC to introduce you at the event, so that again, it's you know, he can sort of fill that time while you're getting set up, and also get people ready to listen to your particular pitch. We have a different, in the evening for the performance excerpts, Amanda Lynn Pearson and the Crack Up Sisters are going to be hosting that event, so that we'll use the introduction that you provide us for those people who are involved in that. We'll be giving that to Amanda so that she can introduce you in the evening instead.
But the introduction may not be word for word of what you provide.
Yeah, certainly. Last year would probably indicate that the MC will be, you know, using that as a, if you like, a guide, and it won't be word for word, that introduction necessarily, but it certainly just helps him prepare for what he's going to say to introduce you onto the stage. So let's see, I'll just make sure I'm covering everything. For the people who are performing in the evening, we will organise time for you to come onto the stage in advance, have a bit of time to rehearse, to make sure the sound system's working for you, that there's sort of the right, you know, like, so that the stage manager on the night is aware of what you need on the stage for those performance excerpts. So we'll probably deal with you separately to this session about how to get ready for that, and also to schedule some time on that stage before the evening's activities start, so that you can feel nice and sort of comfortable and confident in that space. So,
with the evening performances, we do want you to showcase your production in the best possible light, but also be aware that it is a short turnaround. So you will be limited to what you can do in the 2 to 3 minutes between each production. So we don't want you to be spending 10 minutes to set up or a 3-minute performance.
Paul's just asked about how long we have for a sound check. Last year we tried to allocate about half an hour to each group, just to really give them it's not a long time, but it's just enough time to sort of get familiar with the space. That's about right, isn't it, Joe? About half an hour for that rehearsal period during the day for the performance excerpts?
Yeah, that's what we tried to do last year, half an hour. But depending on when people are going to be arriving into the MECC, we'll be doing our best to do half hours with each group before they get onto stage for the evening performance.
Great. So that's kind of like, hopefully, that's basically the basic structure of what's going to be happening at Showcase. Are there any other questions about that before we introduce Charlie? Oh, Damon, yeah, we'll talk to you about that as well. Hopefully, yeah, I think that will be the intention, is to give you some time to rehearse before that happens as well, just to make sure the stage manager again is prepared for what you're going to be doing in that room. You'll be performing in a different room to the evening entertainment, so you'll be in a different space. So we'll be working with you a bit more closely on getting ready for that. Yes, we've talked with the venue about the piano for you, Paul, but I haven't actually had a chance to find out which piano. I think it's probably more likely to be the smaller baby grand, and we just need to negotiate how we get that set up next to the space. So there's still a little bit of detail we're fixing up there. We'll see. Anything's possible in Mackay. Okay, well, in that case, I might ask Charlie if he wants to step in. Joe's going to shuffle out and Charlie's going to shuffle in. Charlie is the general manager for Circa, Contemporary Circus, and he has done a lot of, or had done a number of pitches over the years, and so he's recently returned from New York, where he was pitching to one of the international performing arts markets over there. I thought it might be an interesting sort of opportunity to have Charlie share some of his experiences about that, and maybe to offer a few suggestions to people who are preparing their pitches for Showcase. So thanks very much, Charlie, for joining us.
Thanks.
I appreciate it.
Okay, so this will be my first time pitching at Queensland Showcase, but I did MC the event a couple of years ago, so I've been in the room and heard pitches from everyone who participated on the day, and this will be my third showcase that I attend. So I've kind of got my head around it a bit, but I haven't actually developed a pitch for this particular thing before, so I'm a little bit anxious about being heralded as an expert on the topic. But what I might do is I'm just going to talk through some of the things. I've just drawn a little bit of personal experience about how I approach these things, and then hopefully there's some relevance as well. Hi, Phil, as well. So I've only just arrived, so I'm just having a look down the list at who's here. Okay, hi everybody. That's great. So, and it's a bit of a mix as well in the group, which is fantastic. So my ambiguity will hopefully get me through, and maybe there'll be something in it for you. So I might just hop in. So I guess I will get to the practicalities of the pitch itself in a little bit and just talk about the actual doing of it. But for me, when I approach these things, the pitch is just one step in the process of building the tour. It's a great way to paint a clear picture of who you are, what your product is, what it's actually like to work with your company, and how you can engage with Queensland audiences. However, in my experience, there are only very few tours that have been built based on the value of that particular pitch alone. And there's a number of things, considerations you'll need to have just clarified in your own mind before, and a couple of steps that you really should have taken before you actually climb the podium and belt out your fantastic pitch. So I'm just going to take it back a bit, and then we will actually get to the pitch itself. So the things that I like to think about before I travel to a showcase like one that's coming up in Mackay is start to think about what success might look like for us. So how much actual time and capacity do we have to tour in Queensland in the next 2 years? And you should be kind of thinking that far out. Are you seeking multiple tours, or are you really looking for one big one or one short one even? And do you have any particular regions in mind? So, I mean, you could start to take some time to plot out some preferred routes. So you might just be really interested in Southeast Queensland and doing the donut tour around Brisbane. You might have focus on Mackay through Cairns and maybe down the coast a bit, or just straight up the coast. You know, it's things to start. And you might also know that you're out at the first half of the year because of performances elsewhere, so you're really looking at mid-year, or you're really looking at 2017 at this point and want to have those long-term conversations. I mean, starting to just have some of that even taking shape in your mind is a good thing, but also then having that flexibility that if a presenter turns up from a community venue in Central West, then you're really open to that opportunity, and then from that you might be able to build a tour around that particular conversation. So it's not going in with a rigid set plan of I'm really going in to do this, but actually starting to think about what those tours might look like, and then thinking about who is in the room. Do you already have an existing relationship with some presenters? So would you actually, are you looking to track them down and revisit their venue? Or if not, if you're thinking, I've gone there before, but they would probably know some of the presenters from other regions where you'd like to go, and you might spark that friendship up again, so they might be able to broker you some introduction, or just ask them some advice. I've got this cabaret show. I think it'll work in Cairns. It feels like Cairns is a good place for cabaret, and they might say, yeah, sure, it is, but wouldn't you think about going to blah, because God, they're loving cabaret at the moment. So thinking about who's in the room, what your existing relationships are, and starting to use those. I mean, Luke and Angie will be there from arTour to help with some of that as well. They can, if you've got a name on a list going, I really want to talk to Kerry from Toowoomba, but I just don't know what he looks like. Can you point him out to me? Or if you see him and I'm around, could you just introduce us and then leave us alone? You can ask those things as well. And that's what those kind of brokers, and it's all about the real essence of before you get on the podium, for me, before, during, and after, is about relationships. And it's about really respecting those relationships and cultivating those relationships for presenters, because if they're going to take a punt on putting on your show, they're actually investing in you, and you need to respect that and work with them. And so it's really about cultivating those relationships. And if they're not going to take you this time, then, like I said, they could be the one that helps you meet that next presenter. So
and on that note too, Charlie, I should mention that we will share the delegate list in advance of Showcase too. So you will have a clear picture of who's going to be at the event with you. We'll probably do that at least a week, if not a week and a half or so before. We just sort of have to wait until fairly close to the mark so that we know exactly who's going to be there, without that list sort of changing too much between when we share it and the actual day of the event. But that is something you'll have access to.
Yeah, and that's great. And I might actually get Luke to talk about this next point a bit more as well. But that thinking about who's in the room and who you're looking for, and Luke mentioned that what arTour are doing for the way that they're framing the showcase in this way is we're going to look at the producers and the shows that they have on offer. We're going to look at the list of presenters there and actually start to push you into rooms where we know that there will be a greater interest for you, and starting to really help kind of build those relationships and opportunities. But having a think about, and Luke's already talked about the people who are you guys who are participating today and how that's working already. But who was it? Was it Paul that was saying there's a group who are wanting to see you perform, Paul? So having that in mind as to who that group is, what particular venues are there. And Luke, you chaired a panel recently which had community presenters, small to medium managed presenters, and large managed venues all on it. And there was some things expressed from that around this is what they're looking for. Do you want to talk on that?
Just going back to the selection panels for the Showcase program, we worked with people from the community presenter group, and local councils, and then we worked with the sort of small to medium size managed venues, and then we also worked with the large managed venues, which would have in the past been called like the A venues, if you like. And so they each had a very different set of criteria, if you like, about the type of shows that they wanted to see pitched or performed at Showcase. So for example, and this isn't a hard and fast rule, but it's just an example for you to be aware of, say the community presenters were primarily interested in what they could afford because their budgets are so limited. For many community presenters, these are the arts councils and small local governments in fairly rural and remote areas, their budget for each production is rarely more than $1,700. So it's very hard to have a conversation with them unless you are able to somehow come to an agreement that you can get to their town and do that performance for around that figure. So their first criteria was around price, and then it was kind of around form. So they were like, oh well, we've had cabaret in our town before. We know cabaret works. If it's a piece of cabaret that fits into our price range, they're really keen to hear more about it. Again, I'm speaking very generally here. Who the artist was, who the company was not necessarily the thing that they were focused on. They were much more interested in whether they could afford it and whether it was a type of performance that had worked in their community. for those large venues at the other end of the scale, price is obviously still important, but their issues were much more concerned with the quality of the work, the reputation of the company, their capacity and their tourability, so that they were much more interested in finding out about who the actual artists involved were. So look, speaking very generally, it's kind of good to think about how those particular presenters are going to approach their time at Showcase, because it should, if you have, I think it should affect the way that you perhaps structure your pitch to them a little bit.
Yeah. No, that's right. And I guess also then thinking about and actually getting now kind of closer to the pitch itself. It's and I'll talk a bit generally and then I'll get specific again, but you really want to make sure that you're covering the essentials in what you need to articulate to the presenters. But also, as Luke mentioned, you've only got 6 minutes to do that, and there are other places they can find those details. So if you spend the whole 6 minutes talking about the logistics of what it takes to get your production onto a stage, a lot of that's in the information that's being provided in
through the website.
And there's also time afterwards to actually break that down and talk it through a little bit more detail. And yeah, I do believe that 6 minutes is exactly the right amount of time for a pitch. I don't think it should be any longer than that. And I do believe that the way that the day has been structured, by having enough times to network and have conversations. It used to be at these things, I always found that the best work was done over the lunch break. What they've done now is actually build more of that lunch break time into the day, which is where you actually go and find people, or they come and find you post-pitch. So things you might need to include are, and Luke's already kind of alluded to some of this in his introduction, but any existing interest in the show, its tourability, its availability, or inavailability is also more pertinent in a lot of those sessions, and how many people on the road.
Sometimes it's better to be quite specific about your availability than like massively open-ended.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes that helps with decision making for these presenters.
Yeah, definitely. Also remember that any show in a venue is an outcome of the relationship you've established with a presenter. So I was starting to talk about that before. But the reason I say that is you also want to, in your pitch, be able to articulate what value you're going to bring to that relationship with that presenter. And there can be, and that sounds a little wanky, but it's more. So I've just been censored. But the values might be, you can be pretty straight up in this. Do you do what you say you will? Do you deliver under budget? Are you inexpensive but really high quality? Are you expensive but you're worth every penny? Articulating your value during the pitch, or more importantly, clarifying the value that the presenter will extract from that partnership with you, is something that's really important to convey during your pitch. And I'll draw, like, the reason I say this is, so the one that we did, so Circa pitched in, I just came back from New York, where we pitched at the International Society for Performing Arts. And it was a room where we're actually not looking for, tours would have been a good outcome. We're actually looking for commissioning support for a show. And at that point, we're asking people to put money in before a show's even being made. And that takes, again, comes back to that relationship. It takes a lot of trust and a lot of belief in your ability to actually deliver on this dream at this stage, because you haven't got anything really strong to be able to show for it. So it's really about showing existing previous success, previous work that you've been able to do, but also really clearly saying, we do what we say, we deliver under budget, we don't pester our partners throughout a process, we approach everyone like they're a client who's we're servicing in a way that is a kind of clarifying the value of what you give to that relationship is something that comes. Now, we did we showed a quick trailer of existing work that was a snapshot of some of our more recent shows. We had the artistic director who was actually there with me at the time. Other times I've pitched and he hasn't, so I've used a a video of him that's been taken on, can be on an iPhone basically these days. You don't need, it's nothing that's high production value and schmickly edited. It's really hearing the person who made the show talking about the art of it. And then saying, and what we're looking for is an investment of this much, or what we're looking for is touring opportunities in 2016, and we're open to anyone in the state, or we're actually looking for touring opportunities in the first 3 months of 2017, and we're really looking in far north at this point. It's really then who we are, what the art is, what the value of participating or working with us is, and actually clarifying the ask. And all of that was done in a 7-minute pitch just recently.
I think sometimes it is better to go in with 6, maybe 6 towns that you really want to build a relationship with, rather than hoping to do these sort of big 30 or 40 town tours where they take incredible amount of time to set up and to deliver. Sometimes it is better to consider more of a niche approach to the type of tour circuit that you're looking for.
Yeah, definitely. The other things that the tools you might use, so Luke's talked about a PowerPoint, performance excerpts are fantastic if you feel, particularly if the presenters in the room may not know who you are, and if you can use within the time frame a short performance piece. I know I've got an existing relationship with Babushka Cabaret, who were selling a tour for their very first Queensland tour at the last showcase, and so they chose to perform a short excerpt at the time because the room really didn't know who they were. So it was they couldn't really draw on saying we've done this tour a million times before, and the reviews are blah, because they didn't have that. So saying we're new, we are open to any venues who are interested at this point, and here's what we can do, and did a knockout performance. And from that, built a tour around the response that came back from those presenters. So it's kind of a very, very new approach, very starting out, not new, it's the first time it's been done new, but new in that forum. So it was very open-ended. Whereas the others I've just explained have been more kind of specific in knowing what they want, and it can work either way in that sense. The other thing is,
Actually, just got a question.
Oh yeah,
there,
sure,
Charlie. So Paul, there will be probably the majority of presenters will be there wanting to talk about 2016 already. Certainly from the managed venues point of view, a lot of those people have 2015 pretty wrapped up. They would have already started preparing their marketing materials for 2015 already, and so they will be planning and booking up their program for 2016 and even 2017. Some of them are ready to start the 2017 conversation. However, there certainly are still going to be presenters in the room, and probably community presenters and local councils again, who will be looking for work for the end of this year. So there's still definitely a conversation that can be had about 2015. I think it's good to be upfront about that at the start of your conversation. Like Charlie sort of just been talking about that group, Babushka, they got a tour up from Showcase was in May last year, and they were on the road by October. And so it is possible that Showcase can generate tours within that same year. But more typically, those presenters and the majority of presenters will be wanting to look further afield.
Yeah, and it does, and yeah, just to echo that, it really depends on the size of the venue too. I know, I won't name, I guess, but we wanted to talk to one of the larger managed venues at Showcase last year about 2015, and they were just saying not a chance, and even better getting quick because 2016's filling up. So I mean that was one, and it's probably the more rare end to be 2 years in advance. But yeah, look, there are, which is a great example where they ended up still getting into Coca 6 months away, and that's a decent sized venue in Cairns. But that tour, which ended up taking them to Cairns and Townsville, actually started from a pitch and a small community presenter that's along the way between Mount Isa and Cairns, showing interest in it. And so actually, the presenter, I think it was Hewenden, who was the first one who came on board. Hewenden turned out to be the anchor. the anchor for a tour that went to much larger venues along the way, but they were the great one. And Joe Curry, who's still in the room, just passed a note to say that Roma confirmed Melissa Weston's tour 2 weeks out. 2 weeks out. So
a lot of those small community presenters, those community orgs, are dealing with committees. They're dealing with having to make decisions amongst a large group of people, and so sometimes getting consensus can take longer than it does for a managed venue. And so yeah, it can be right at the last minute before they commit to the show, which is absolutely harrowing and less than ideal, but it does happen.
Yeah, and you know, it's really then once you start to string the tour together, like having a couple of venues in a region, then it's then when you can start to be proactive with the other venues on that in those areas. That might mean you know that you've got dates in Cairns, so you do want to have a conversation with the regional areas around it. So who's in Innisfail, who's on the Cassowary Coast, who's in Atherton, who's in those satellite venues around there where you can start to do some of those. I feel we've got Andy in the room who's probably got more experience in actually shaping and developing and delivering tours in Queensland than I have. But you know, it's really about you know, it's about that. It's finding that interest, developing those relationships, talking to those venues, saying, "Oh, great, we'd love to come to you, but we need more dates to make this viable." And they might even be proactive in helping you secure some of those by getting on the phone or giving you contact details for their neighbouring venues. And their interest is in actually making it more affordable for themselves by helping spread those travel costs and freight costs with some of the others.
Paul, just arTour is able to provide a range of services, so we can either manage a tour on your behalf, essentially, and it's a fee for service that we can do that work. We can help out extra venues or presenters into a tour. We can help negotiate those presenter fees. We can help develop itineraries and budgets and book accommodation and flights, etc. We can, you know, as a tour coordinating service, there's a range of things that we can offer. I suppose it's you, and this is something we're probably going to talk about later, but there is, you know, if you can decide before you even get to showcase if you intend or would prefer that arTour is involved in your project. There's certainly no obligation for that to happen. So if you are feeling, if you feel capable and connected, and you want to manage that tour all by yourself and broker those venues, you're more than welcome to do that. arTour is by no means the gatekeeper of touring in Queensland. We're there to provide support for different producers and for presenters. So it's really up to you, really. If you want us to be involved, we can. Particular services have particular costs attached to them. Those costs can be included in funding applications to Playing Queensland, so that you know, in a sense, they're not direct costs to you if your funding is approved. And if you're interested in us being involved in your project, and you know before you get to showcases that's the case, then certainly let us know. Have a chat to me, give me a call, discuss what sort of services you think you might need, and then you can go into tours, go into showcase saying, you know, once you've got interest from some of these presenters, that you are intending to hand that over to arTour, and arTour will begin to manage that tour. And
so, you know, another so I mean, Paul, I wouldn't hesitate to contact those presenters directly. And you know, like our post showcase, it's really about going through the list of contacts that you made and then following up. And if you think that there's interest in a tour or even a season, have that conversation. And it's really about, you know, they'll know that you need to pull together a couple of other dates if it's going to be viable, if there's decent travel involved. Or, you know, maybe it's a one night there and back, but it's less likely. Then have those chats. I mean, the way that I would approach it in that instance is I'd talk to everyone that I think there's some potential in a season coming out of it, and then I'd talk to Luke or Angie afterwards to say, this is the interest I've shown, starting to get some ideas. Is this viable? What do you reckon? And that's where arTour I've found is really handy. When it actually becomes, okay, I've got a few dates at work and the venues are confirmed or committed, then I'd write the plain Queensland application and again come to arTour and seek advice. And then if you want arTour to run the tour for you or run elements of it, which might be, I'll run it myself and I'm going to get them to do the marketing for it. Or actually I'm going to get them to do the whole thing, all the logistics and the marketing and promoting, but all of that's going to be paid for by the grant application that I submit. So they get paid by the application and you just, you just work with them and they do a fair chunk of the work for you. And their fees don't start to kick in until the funding application's approved. So it's not like you're asking these guys for advice and the tour doesn't happen or the grant doesn't get in and then you get smacked with a big dirty bill. It doesn't work like that. arTour is a service that's funded by Arts Queensland to actually give you that help. And then there's these things that they can run it for you at a fee later on.
There is, I mean, the other with every producer or presenter, in fact, that we work with, we do really stress the importance of that relationship between the presenter and the producer. So we're not particularly big fans of just being given the whole project and then you just wait for you to be told when you're going to, go to your first venue. It is very much all those stakeholders are engaged in the process. So the conversation that happens between the producer and the presenter, particularly around things like community engagement and types of audience and how to market the work and what marketing resources you can sort of contribute to the process, they are really, they're incredibly important conversations that are best had between the person who's created the work and the person who's going to present that work into a community. So yes, no matter what the scenario is, we would be encouraging you to have a direct communication with that presenter in any case. The other, there's kind of two more points I was going to make. I might just finish the other one before though. So just started to talk about the pitch itself and if you wanted to use some clips of existing work that you've been able to show, it might be a PowerPoint, it might be images from previous productions. If you did have a trailer, that if you did have any footage and you could have it edited, then a 45-second thing of excerpts that might be broken up by reviews of the show, that sort of thing. If you did have a depth of work that you could draw upon in that can kind of show those presenters that you have done this before and that you've had a level of success in that space. But when you're talking, I've done this before and not done well, but I've spoken and then had a series of different slides going behind me, and I found that people switch off to what you're saying and they look at the screen behind you, and then when the thing's finished, they're like, oh, that guy's still talking. So what I do now is I just have a holding image. I don't even, if it's the poster for the show, have that behind you, great. Or a key image from the show, great. Have something behind you while you're talking as a holding image that gives an indication of who you are and what the kind of work you're doing, but then throw to a trailer or then show the slides and talk them through what's going there, but don't talk while there's a whole lot of stuff going on behind you, something I've found. And again, if you're not, I don't create the work that I'm talking about, so I try and have a level of, I want to get something in front of them, which would be the artistic director or even the costume designer or one of the performers talking about an element of it. You really want to sell it in a way that's not, it's only going to be cheap and it's this many nights and there's this many handouts. It's just, oh God, I really want that show in my venue. The art of it and whatever you're doing, or the entertainment or whatever your art form is, it's like that's the bit they really want to buy. I've got a couple more questions there.
Yeah.
Paul, you're asking about sort of what collateral you might bring to showcase and distribute to those people in the room. I suppose that's really up to you. Some people like to have collateral as a talking point. In terms of show bags, look, I think really probably the more effective thing to hand out is your contact details. You're really wanting to use showcase as a conversation starter with a view to continuing that conversation over the next weeks and months. So I would say I would put less emphasis, personally, I would put less emphasis on bringing collateral and handouts. I would be finding ways to give people a way to contact you and then directing them to where that material sits already.
Yeah.
I suppose there's a little bit of green thinking in that as well, about sort of creating a whole bunch of collateral that that quite often people don't look at very much after the event. No?
Yeah, and people are traveling as well. Like there's good people go, that's really beautiful, but you know when they're getting on a plane back to wherever they're from, hotel bins get full of really expensive collateral. So if you're if you don't already have it in stock and you're thinking, oh, I've got to go and spend all this money and time, you know, designing it and then money printing it, and then it's not the best use of your time or money.
Put the money into a really good website. Yeah. Put the money into, you know, having that audio available on a website, or that video available, or having, those platforms where you can always keep pushing people back to access information about your company. I think that's where the investment would be. And
to answer Emilio's question about if the reviews are on the arTour website, is it worth putting them in your 6 minutes? I mean, if only if it helps reinforce that that point you're trying to make around, we've done this before and people loved it. You know, it's that convincing that, you know, those venues who are taking a punt on you going, will this work? You want to just kind of say, oh, and those people have got doubts about whether this will work. Who've done it before and it's worked for them, and here are some reviews. So you don't need to really hammer the point home, and even having some of those reviews flashing up in between some of the images, or as you are describing the work, or you've finished describing the work and there's some reviews on the screen, it can't hurt, I think. And you don't want to labour the point, it's just having them there helps point it. And if they're on the arTour website, maybe those presenters who've kind of piqued their interest may not get to the point of going, oh, I'll jump online and I'll click on that and I'll click to the reviews. It just, having them there can help. And
I should say too that with the arTour website, that content that you've already put on the website, you can continue to edit that at any time. So that's a living page for you, where you can, if you've got more reviews that have just come in about your work, you've got new opportunities that you'll show. For example, I know Melissa's been offered a really exciting opportunity over in Europe. You know, if you want to start to talk about that in that content that's on our website, that's what it's there for. It's really a vehicle for you to sell that work. So continue to update it, keep it alive, keep it fresh, and I think that makes it a more practical sort of destination for people to find out about your show.
And I do, yes, Melissa, I reckon business cards is still the way to go. Like I find even in these kind of greener, like a lot of our presenter pack, we have little USB keys that we have our details of each show with high-res images and pre-approved quotes and reviews of the work and links to trailers on Vimeo and that sort of stuff. And we don't hand those out willy-nilly. We kind of wait till we get a point of where it starts to feel like it's a qualified lead and then it might turn into something. Then that's more of a, oh, here's a little something that actually gives you the information, and it kind of brings them a bit closer, but it's probably after the third conversation, or, you know, when it's getting a little bit more definite. But business cards are really great for that. And even when you come back from a trip away, you're like, okay, I've got this stack of business cards, and you sort them out into who you've got to call back and not. And I think having them there just reminds people even afterwards, as they sort through them, they're still, you know, they're pretty old school, but they seem to still work. So yeah, I'd say so. And Phil's question was how many presenters will be there? So how many cards or flyers will be needed?
Look, probably, I would say, it's hard to say.
Depends on how many conversations you want to have.
I would say it's hard to say.
That
many. Look, probably between 50 and 60 we would expect. Probably between 50 and 60. And the other thing too is it's probably not a bad time. Damon, I'll come to your question in a sec. It's probably not a bad time to mention the marketplace activity that's within the program as well. So there are breakout parts of the program where people can set up a table with some of your information about your work, and so it's, if you like, it's that an informal expo, if you like. So you can have an iPad on the table with the clip ready of your performance ready to go. You have your business cards, and really we allocate space and a table, etc., for each producer to have an anchor point in the room that people can come to you and talk to you about your work. So that's why, like I said earlier, the pitch is really to get them intrigued and work it as a hook, so that when you do come to those marketplace opportunities later in the program, you can they will hopefully feel really intrigued enough to come and actually continue that conversation. And that's why we haven't really built in question and answer time after each of those pitches either. So that can all happen in those breakout periods. So Damon, you're asking.
Yeah, that was one of the last 2 points I was going to touch on. So do you want me? So Damon's question was around even if his question is around if you're performing mainly to community presenter groups, do you suggest we provide acting, writing, improvisation workshops for those communities while our show is in town? I'd say that no matter what venue size you're looking to present at, engaging with the communities in and around those venues is hugely important for a number of reasons. One, it's one of the 4 main criteria in Playing Queensland applications, and they do want to see that. There's a bit of talk and rumbling about that. I remember one year around a showcase saying, I'm a performer, I'm not a teacher, but this has kind of been built in because it's the other side of the spectrum from one night stands where people would go in, perform, and then leave and not engage. And so I truly believe that if you're just thinking shallow, like sometimes I do, then you need to do it because the funding's there for it. If you do actually want to engage with presenters and build a relationship so that they might have you back again, they'll have you back if you build an audience in that town and the ticket and shows sell well, and they see that you actually want to work with their audiences, then there's more likelihood that they will have you back again. And the third point is, if you engage with those communities and those audiences, then they'll come back and see you another time as well. You also then grow your audience base. They'll show an interest in where you're touring. If you're performing next time, not in their town, but not that far away, they might travel to see you because you've shown an interest in them, because you've engaged with those communities. It also is good if you actually sharing your art form with communities and people who might not normally have access to it, and particularly in regional and remote communities, access to high quality arts and culture can be challenging at times. So if you make that effort, it's actually really important to the cultural landscape of Queensland. So it's everything from it shallow bit to get the money to, you're actually contributing to your sector if you do it well. So yeah, I do think it's important.
I think it's also a case of what else can you do? So workshops are great. It's good to know what sort of workshop offering that you can bring to a community, and that can be through a school, it can be through particular groups, charities, breast cancer fundraising events. You might be able to offer a range of activities to very different parts of each community. But what I think this is actually, community engagement is really more about what you can how you can respond to a particular community's needs. So, and this again is about that relationship that you have between you as a producer and the presenter, and having a very clear dialogue about, okay, what would be something that is of value to your community. I can offer that through a workshop, and there's nothing wrong with a workshop, but quite often you can have a much richer conversation about the other things that you can also offer in that space. Now, arTour, we have a few videos starting to be uploaded onto our website from different presenters and producers talking about what that engagement could be or what it could mean in particular communities. And I think it's a really interesting, some really interesting opinions about that stuff. I would really urge you to spend a bit of time having a look at that before you get to Showcase. I think if you want to talk to me directly about that, I'm very happy to discuss that further with you before Showcase, so we can sort of get that those options or that suite of possibilities a little bit clearer as you walk into the event.
Presenters will ask that question. If they're like, okay, great, we'd love to have you for one night, maybe two, but if I got you in for that amount of time, what could we do in the community? When you're not performing, and concerts in small venues around there, workshops like Luke said, working with schools. I mean, Circa at the moment has got some of our training centre participants working with 3 dance schools in Bundy as part of a year-long program, partnering with Creative Regions, and we've got trainers up in Bundy right now working with 3 dance schools to make a young circus troupe that'll come down here and perform at the end of the year, and hopefully it's going to be a 3-year program, not a 1 year. And that came from a one-off workshop series that developed a relationship out there and that was nurtured with a community arts organisation on the ground, and now we've got this long-term thing happening, and it's fantastic. It means that contemporary circus is actually being taught in dance schools in Bundaberg when it wasn't before, and that's huge success for us. The other thing to just segue into that was the final point, and I'm mindful of time's a bit quick too, is the other thing is the audiences are different, you know, in every community that you go to. And so, and again, this is something that came out of, I'm living vicariously through my wife's tour, but Luke said some community venues will want to know the form. So cabaret, yeah, we'll take cabaret here, we'll take cabaret there, and had an anticipation that they'll be performing to the, or, you know, even though they assumed there'll be different venues, they were surprised by what venues were responding to the really fun, loud stuff and what were responding to really poignant, beautiful moments of it. And that, it was different wherever they went. You couldn't pick it, you know. And over time, if you went back regularly, you might start to get to know those, and ideally you would. But you know, there was probably a more conservative approach to it in Cairns when they thought that was the nightclub district, whereas you know in Julia Creek they went off. And so you don't know until you've gone there. You work with your presenters around that, and so yeah, just kind of respecting that. I don't know how what the answers are to that. I'd say talk to your venue. You know, this is what we're trying to do and how does it work. But I guess it's being open to that, and as you take your performance there, being aware of it, and then I don't know. It depends on the style of performance you have, but how you shape that. You know, if you have flexibility in your style of performance, how you work that with the different audiences. But it's just being aware that you're not taking the one show, the one group of people over a number of different nights. It's, you know, every community is different, audiences are different, and the best gateway or conduit to those are the presenters that, again, you're trying to build those relationships.
Paul, just to answer your question there, I mean, really, that's case by case. If you can either choose to add any of those workshops you want to offer, you can add them at an extra fee. I think one of the scenarios that we've seen work quite well is that sometimes within the performance fee they offer one workshop as a sort of free workshop to the community, and if the community wants to do more or over and above that one, they sort of set that up as a separate cost. So that's one way to approach that. Again, you really have to tailor that depending on what the community and you decide that you're going to do. But yeah, look, I have seen it work. It's been a successful model to see at least one workshop included as part of that presenter fee.
Yeah.
And then additional ones cost extra.
And it can be a good leverage tool if you're getting to a point of negotiating a fee and you just can't quite get there. You can also, look, I'll throw in the workshop. I'm in town anyway. I'll do it at a time that's convenient for everyone, myself included as a performer, so I'm not running myself ragged and then doing an exhausted performance, but I'll do one at a time that works. You can charge a very minimal fee so that you can get numbers, but I'll do it if you can give me, you know, if you can come to the party on that final bit. I mean, we've used it to help us in fee negotiations as well, and sometimes it's great. They're taking a risk at times. They're investing in bringing you there. It's one way that you can help offset it. I mean, it just depends. Other times, it's something that you can feel that it's a way for you to recoup costs. If you've come to the party and feel like you're giving them a really good deal, they might be able to help out by going, look, I know that there's going to be people lining up. I've got this group and they want to do a masterclass in voice. They'll pay this. So if I help set that up, you get that, but can we work on this fee over here? It's a tool in that way as well at times. There's no one approach to it. I feel Angie's probably got more experience than I have in this. But, you know, arTour here and can have those conversations with you as you approach. Yeah. So that's all I had.
That's all you had? Okay.
Well, kind of. I could talk all day, Luke.
I know you could. That isn't the truth. Yeah, I suppose, I suppose it's probably a good time to talk about what happens after Showcase a little bit more, and just to sort of, so people are clear about the process, and this is something we can talk about further at Showcase and discuss with people there. But basically, and I'm just conscious of time. Some people might need to head out of this conversation in a minute, but what we're hoping to do is within the showcase, there's an opportunity for presenters to review their choices, and really they give arTour. We collect those responses, and they give us an indication of the stuff that they would either like to, yep, absolutely sign me up straight away. Shows that they perhaps want more information about. Shows that they might be interested in if it's going to be coming past their town anyway, or maybe shows that it just doesn't suit their audiences, and they will just let that one go through to the keeper. We collect all of those sort of responses about each show. We give it a couple of weeks because there's people that need to go back to their committees to get some consensus from their groups. Once we've sort of got a fairly clear picture about what interest people have received at Showcase, we share that back to the producers. So regardless of whether you're going to be using arTour services or not, we'll give you a very clear indication of the interest that was received about your show. So that you can then choose to run off and broker your own tour, or you can begin the process of working with arTour to develop a tour that way instead. We find that that's nice and equitable and quite transparent way of making sure that everyone knows what the outcomes were from Showcase. There will be people that don't receive very much interest. That is then, I suppose, a decision that you can make about whether or not you want to proceed to find other presenters, and there's nothing stopping you. Certainly, the people at Showcase won't represent every possible presenter in Queensland, so there's always other avenues to find people who will present the work. Anyway, so we'll collect that information. We'll share it back to everyone.
I can answer Emilio's question.
Oh, Emilio's got a question. Yep.
Yeah, so Emilio's question is, if it's dance, is it worth showing a video clip if your dancers aren't available? I'm going to be pitching on behalf of Circa. I don't have any acrobats handy, and we don't want to see him. You don't want to see me doing anything related to it, so I'll be showing a brief clip that will basically be a quick, 45-second snapshot of work that the company's done, and that's all I can do at that point, and then rely on my sweet banter to try and bring the rest over the line.
It's certainly a very valid.
Thanks, Paul. Let's talk.
I think it's a very valid tool to use during your pitch, is to show some video of the work. I mean, yeah. It gives a really genuine sense of the aesthetic that you're working in, and the style, the form, the feeling that show will create. So. Definitely, I would absolutely support that idea. Yeah. But as Charlie says, use it strategically. Use it. Don't use the whole 6 minutes with video. Think about how that actually helps you communicate what you're trying to communicate.
Yeah.
Just one more thing to mention after Showcase. arTour is going to hit the road after Showcase. We're heading out to Cairns, Winton, and Toowoomba, and we're going to be leading some sessions with local presenters in those communities. It's not really something that's for producers. I only mention it so that you know that there's a process that continues after Showcase for another 2 weeks, where we actually go and we continue to talk about different productions that would suit particular communities, or that we think that particular communities might be interested in. So that's something that the whole arTour team will go on the road together. It's a chance for us to talk to those different communities, help them do some networking, look at professional development opportunities, and that will all be fed back into the process as well. So that's really just to put that on your radar, that that's happening. And that's, I think, basically everything I've got on my list to talk about. It is 3:05. I'm conscious that we sort of said this would be between 2 and 3, but we can take some more questions. I think we've got a little bit of time to take some more questions.
I think that Paul and Emilio need to take their conversation
I think
offline.
you need to meet up and...
and the minutes will be streamed out to every performing arts venue and presenter in the state, so...
we need people's presentations. Paul, we need everyone's presentations in by Monday, the 9th of March, which is exactly a week before. That gives us time to make sure it's all working, and then we've got time to fix up problems if there's any problems. And performers, people who are participating with a performance excerpt instead, we actually need that information immediately, really, so that we can plan any production requirements around that, look at scheduling those bump-in times and rehearsal times. So if you haven't sent back your information about your performance excerpt or the performance that you might be doing at Showcase, we would encourage you to do that as soon as possible. We really need to get that soon. Again, we'll probably be in touch with you some more after that to really discuss, the ordering of it, so you are very clear about how that particular performance fits in with everything else that's happening. Any other questions that people have?
I can see Emilio's typing now.
I should, just while people are thinking of questions, one of the things we're also planning to do is have some breakout sessions for producers too, so that you don't have to sit there watching everyone else's pitch, and if that's really not your thing. We'll have some other sessions available for producers to do some work. We might look at some budgeting stuff, some funding things, some different professional topics that are useful and practical for producers in particular. We're also doing a big session around community engagement. So again, for those people who still don't quite have their head around that, we'll spend some time with a panel of really experienced community engagement people, and get them to sort of really offer a little bit more advice and ideas about what that could look like for you.
Cool.
Paul, I thought that should have come through to you. I'll chase it up. If you haven't received that form yet, we'll get that to you. But I thought we would have. But yeah, we'll chase it up, Paul. Sorry, thanks for letting us know.
Cool.
Thank you, everyone. It seems like it's winding up, so we might sign off, and really appreciate everyone's time. Thank you again to Flying Arts, and to Charlie and to Joe.